Don't call me sassy. Like, I don't even know what sassy means, honestly. And I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm just a person who expresses myself. And if I want to be flamboyant, let me be flamboyant. Don't call me sassy. It's not an edge, it's not spicy.
What were some of your early experiences in dealing with how your race played with your drag when going out to clubs?
Okay, so it's always been so weird for me because I'm like multiracial, but I've always been faced with the racism, the colorism. Like, I kind of also felt like I never fit into like the New York drag scene at first. I just remember like people would see me and my friends would be like, oh, that's the ratchet train, or like, oh, they're so ratchet, or like people would accuse me of like stealing from them, or like, you know, just like doing fucked up shit, or like they just assume, or you know, they call you abrasive, you're angry, you're ghetto. And, you know, I'm not just a person of color, I'm a person who comes from a very urban background. I also lived in New York all my life. So when people expect me to just be like, to act like an implant, you know, I don't come from Ohio. I didn't grow up in a fucking cornfield. Like, I grew up in the hood. Like, I just can't expect them to relate. But at first, like, it hurt a lot. Like, I would just be like, oh, okay. Like, I felt, at first, I even felt myself trying to conform myself a little bit and be like, well, I have to be on my best behavior. I have to be this, I have to be that. And I think that it's kind of like a fucked up ideology that gets installed into people of color's minds as they grow up, is that you have to whitewash yourself a little bit to be accepted in society. And it's really messed up, but it's very common and it's very often. I just know I've had so many friends who are like Black or Latin who have even gone as far as like, you know, having their birth name, but then like making like a more English rendition of their name for people to call them, like just because they just don't want to use their name, or like because they feel uncomfortable in their skin color. And, you know, I just think that that's something that I just don't understand why that has to be brought into a place where we're trying to have love and peace and we're trying to be ourselves. I just feel like being in drag, you're already a minority. Like, like we're accepting drag right now, but let's be real, a lot of people still think that we're clowns. They still think that, some of us are. A lot of people still think that, you know, this is a joke, that this is this or that. And I think everyone needs to realize that in our community, we're already fighting for that acceptance. Do we need to pinpoint at other places where people are still seeking acceptance? I just don't understand it at all.
The racism that you mentioned, was that coming from promoters? Was that coming from other queens? Was that coming from club goers?
It came from everywhere.
Everywhere.
It came from everywhere. It just like, it mostly had to do with like, you're ratchet. What does that even mean? Like, what? Like, or the one I hate the most is the word sassy. I fucking hate that. Like, don't call me sassy. Like, I don't even know what sassy means, honestly. And I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm just a person who expresses myself. And if I want to be flamboyant, let me be flamboyant. Don't call me sassy. It's not an edge, it's not spicy. I hate that word too. I'm not spicy. I'm sweet, I'm wearing pink.
What about colorism in the drag world? You mentioned that earlier.
I hate that so much. I watch so many people. Here's the thing, with me, I'm Black and Middle Eastern, but like a lot of people think I'm Puerto Rican, or some people think I'm white, or some people just think I'm Black. So I feel like I become off racially ambiguous, and a lot of people won't know where I fit in. But I've heard so many like colorist things of people just talking about other people's skin color, or like, and it comes from everywhere. It's just like, this girl is not Black enough to be Black. This girl, you know, she's a white Mexican, so she's just white. It's just like, what? It's just like, you cannot scrape someone's culture off of them because you feel like their skin color does not define the culture or race that they were born with or identify with. So I'm just like, I've seen that everywhere, and I'm just like, this makes no sense. I hate racial division in drag, by the way. I think it's so dumb, I think it's stupid, and it doesn't really happen as much in New York as I've experienced it happening in other places, especially after touring. There's a lot of cities where I realize like I'll be the only girl of color in the entire cast, or I'll be like, in another place I'll be like the lightest skinned girl in the cast, and I'll just be like, wow, I'm just assuming, which I shouldn't assume, but this cast was picked so specifically. And I'm just like, I don't understand. I just wish there was so much more of a mixture in places, like where people can just kind of get along and just like, you know, it sucks because it never will be that way. Well, never say never. It may not be that way now, but I hope people take an approach and like a step forward to just making it happen. I just feel like it's part of what Martin Luther King stood up for. It's just like everyone being together, not, you know, not radical colorism or telling someone that they're not this or that. Like, can we just be? I just wish we were all grayscale, honestly. Then next thing you know, one person, you're 10% grayer than me.
Yeah. You said white drag queens do tend to pick on the black queens and the queens of color because they think people won't have our back. What did you mean by that?
There's been many times where I've witnessed that there's just like a group or like even larger like groups of white queens who will like kind of like pick on the one black queen in the cast, or like they'll give her less credit for what she did, or it's like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, that black queen is turning it all over the city, and then we have this white queen who's her best friend who started drag 2 weeks ago. Let's give an opportunity to the white queen. I've seen it happen so many times. It's happened to me. It was so hard for me to get gigs in Manhattan when I first started doing drag. And you know, I'm not gonna name names. I don't need to name names because those people know who they are and they have to live with that. I don't. But girl, people have our backs. And everywhere, there is going to be a black queen, a queen of color, a Latin queen, who's going to be like, you're talented, I'm gonna give you a platform. And like, you know, I want people to be recognized for their talent, not their color, not their race, not any of that. And I feel like that's something that happens very commonly, actually also in the New York scene. It maybe hasn't happened recently. I can't speak for what's happened in the last 2 years because I've been absent, but.
She's booked.
But, you know, I do see that it's a lot more open now and a lot more queens of color are coming up and they're really like turning the party. But I really hope they're getting the opportunity and getting the gigs they deserve and getting paid what they're owed, because they're talented. They're just as talented.
Shangela spoke about there being a sort of whisper network among some of the queens with regards to this promoter won't pay you on time, or just sort of looking out for each other. Is there something similar amongst the queens of color? I don't mean necessarily like a group chat, but are you guys talking to one another when you deal with racist promoters or just racism within the fandom in general? Are these conversations you guys are offlining about?
No, but I think we should. I think it's important for us to communicate. I am very fortunate to never have had to deal with racism from a promoter. So I think that's amazing. I would never want to work with somebody who lives their lifestyle that way. It's a very disgusting lifestyle. But I think it is important that the queens of color do. I think also the white. I think everyone. I don't think a white queen should work with a racist promoter either. Why bring this person more money and power than they already think they have? Racism comes from a place of ego. Like, racism is just, it's basically just a new word for like ethnocentrism. Like, it's just people who, that's the word, right?
Yeah.
I was just making sure. See, I'm educated. You know, it's just like a new way for people to like think that they're superior to other people. And like, it just brings it back to back in the day. And like, girl, this ain't back in the day. We ain't in that time. Segregation is over. Slavery is over. Let's not perpetuate that in modern society, because just because it's not happening in word or in law does not mean it's not happening metaphorically. So don't perpetuate that.